So today we're going to talk about different types of trucking jobs and what might be uh, safe from being taken over by AI, for example. So let me start by saying I think dry van and reefer are probably the trucking jobs most susceptible, if I could say that right, susceptible to AI or automated trucks. Because you can imagine, you go to a big distribution center and it could be fully automated. Even the loaders and unloaders could be automated, and the trucks could be automated, the yard dogs automated. In a controlled environment, that can be automated. But can flatbeds be automated? Because those drivers, do a lot for rigging and tarping, and they have to stop every like 2 hours and check that their tie downs are all good, or tighten them. So I don't know a lot about flatbed, but I would think flatbed drivers would be more secure than dry van or reefer. Same thing with oversized. Could self-driving trucks do oversized loads? Oversized is it takes a lot of special precautions. I mean, many times you have a pilot car and or a police escort. I don't see that job becoming automated. It's something that's so large that's oversized. I'm sure they would prefer to have a human in the truck. So many times they got to maneuver, and the ability to make it work, it comes down to a matter of inches and experience and judgment. I don't see automation taking over oversized trucking jobs, for example. Well, how about some other specialized jobs like cement truck driver? You know, they don't just drive, but they also are there to clean out the rotating drum. They're there to pour the cement. So it's not just driving for them. They also have to maintain that equipment. How about garbage truck drivers? Could garbage truck drivers be automated? Maybe. If the system is set up to make it easier. Like you have standardized containers, you have a specific route. Perhaps. But there are many small businesses that uh, would need garbage pickup. These dumpsters in the back of the business, for example. I don't see automated trucks going around being garbage truck drivers. So how about dump truck drivers? Do you think automation could take over for dump truck drivers? I mean, a lot of times you're going through construction zones, and you got to deliver asphalt or gravel or sand or something. I don't I don't see that being taken over by automation. How about oil and gas industry? The trucks out there, they're doing fracking, and they're hauling sand. And they're off the beaten path. They're not even on the highway. So I don't see automation taking those types of jobs either. So I think there are some trucking jobs that are more likely to become automated, and others that are probably not. So I'm in drive-in, which is probably most acceptable to being automated. But with the CDL, you could easily transfer it to a different type of trucking company. I always was interested in flatbed. I mean, I think that would be interesting. I also think with automation, you're probably only looking at major companies that would use it. You know, pre- Places that have huge distribution centers, and not only is the shipper automated, but the receiver is automated, and so that the whole route, the whole loading, the whole shebang can be automated. That might work, but many of the customers here at Crete, for example, are not that big. Like right now, I'm hauling a beer load for Miller Coors. I'm taking it to a real small distribution, beer distributor, it's pretty small. It's not going to be automated. I mean, I don't see that happening. A lot of these customers, shippers and receivers, are small, and they're not going to invest, millions and millions of dollars in automation. It'd be cheaper to continue to do business as usual and hire drivers to haul their freight. They're not that big. They can't invest in that type of technology. And as the economy grows and small businesses grow and manufacturing is reshored, more and more manufacturing, they typically start out as small companies. They become part of the supply chain. They're not going to invest in automation. They're just going to use regular drivers. So I will say that automation will have the potential to replace a lot of drivers. But I think these drivers can be reabsorbed in other parts of the trucking industry. The trucking industry is huge. All kinds of specialty freight that I don't think automation is going to be able to do. It's something where I think there's always going to be a place for the experienced driver. Will automated trucks have a role? I think so. I think that technology will advance for maybe some of the largest uh, shippers and receivers that can handle that kind of investment. But you know, I I think that most of the trucking industry is going to continue to have drivers. When you look at trucking companies, most trucking companies are not that large. I mean, yeah, Crete is. Crete's a mega carrier or a big box carrier, 5,000 drivers. Schneider, 10,000 drivers. What, Swift have like 50,000 drivers? But most of the trucking industry is like 10 trucks or less. So those trucking companies are not going to go to automation. Only the big players would probably do it. And a lot of these trucking companies that are employing hundreds or thousands of drivers have union contracts, the Teamsters, and the Teamsters are negotiating that contract. Part of the negotiation is no automation, no automated trucks. So, will automation come into the industry? I think that's inevitable. Will some drivers be displaced? I'm sure they will. But those same drivers will probably find plenty of opportunities in other parts of the trucking industry. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the internet.